Women of Reddit share their craziest stories. Please subscribe to support our channel. Story 1. I've worked in the intimacy industry since I was 19, professionally, confidently, and without shame. People always imagine that line of work as chaotic or messy, but truthfully, it's a lot of emotional intelligence, boundaries, and imagination. When I started, I was dating someone who thought what I did was fine in theory, until we broke up. Then the same man who once said he could handle it was suddenly begging to book me as a client. The irony was too perfect. I thought, well, if you want to see me again, you can do it by my rules. Let's just say revenge looked a lot more like control than chaos. I gave him a lesson in patience, literally. I created challenges for him, little exercises to test just how much restraint he actually had. Every time he thought he was close to getting what he wanted, I'd smile and remind him that rewards come after discipline. If he broke the rules, there were penalties, and he always broke them. Eventually, it stopped being about payback and started being about power. Playful, theatrical power. I discovered that what I loved most wasn't the physical part at all, but the psychological dance. The eye contact, the tension, the frustration that sits right between desire and surrender. Over time, as I began seeing other clients, that became the theme. I built sessions around anticipating what people wanted most, and then reteaching them how to earn it. I'm not the type to rush anything. My favorite word in the entire English language might actually be wait. Sometimes we'd just sit across from each other in silence, me completely composed, them trying to read my every move. Sometimes I stayed fully clothed, the mystery more powerful than the reveal. For the more established ones, though, I might turn up the atmosphere. Dim lights, calm music, a slow smile, and precise words meant to test just how much tension they could hold before they cracked. It's never about humiliation or punishment, not really. It's about energy exchange, control, trust, restraint. It's about seeing how far someone will go for approval, and how far I can push a promise without actually crossing it. There's something endlessly entertaining about seeing someone learn self-control in real time. About watching a person who's so sure they're in charge realize they never really were. And when they finally understand that trust, patience, and respect are the real currency, not impulsive gratification, that's when the energy shifts. With every new client, I keep my rituals. I set my rules. I make them wait. No touching, no rushing, no shortcuts. The more they think they're about to get exactly what they came for, the closer I stand, the quieter I get, and the more the room just hums with tension. And at the end, when I finally say, that's enough for today, they walk out frustrated but also glowing, the kind of daze that comes from being seen, tested, and perfectly denied. People think what I do is wild, but it's really just art made of boundaries and suspense. The power of almost. The temperature of not yet. The delicious, slow burn that lives in the gap between what you want and what you're allowed to have. Story 2. I shared this story once before but had to take it down. Privacy reasons, names, you get it. Let's just say I'm retelling it with the edges sanded down a little. But the story? Still unbelievable. My roommate, John, comes from money. The kind of money that opens doors you didn't even know existed. Through him, I've somehow found myself shaking hands with people I used to watch on TV, or seeing my name on guest lists that I clearly didn't belong on. It's surreal. He also happens to be one of those guys you can't even hate for it. Tall, handsome, charming, ridiculously confident. The kind of guy who walks into a room and you can literally feel everyone notice. He makes you want to stand taller just to share a bit of his spotlight. So yeah, John being that guy means there's a steady rotation of gorgeous women in and out of our apartment. Every time it happens, it's like watching some social experiment conducted by the universe about what life looks like when you hit all the genetic jackpots. You'll be eating cereal in your old t-shirt, and a model glides by barefoot, humming to herself. It's wild. Anyway, one day John tells me he's been talking to someone. Not just someone, that someone. I can't say her name for obvious reasons, but trust me, you know her. You've seen her. Everyone has. She's got that magnetic kind of beauty that's almost unfair. She'd just come out of a messy relationship, and somehow, John had met her at one of his family friends' events. When he first told me, I laughed in his face. I told him, yeah, sure, and I'm dating a Marvel superhero. Then he showed me messages. Actual proof. My jaw hit the floor. Looks like life really does play favorites. Fast forward a week, and John tells me to keep it chill when I get home later that night. We're having company, he says with that little grin he does when he knows something outrageous is about to happen. I roll my eyes and go about my day. But when I open the door that night, there she is. The woman from half my teenage daydreams, standing in our living room, sipping wine like she stepped out of a magazine. I froze, completely blanked. She smiled and said, "Hi." Just that, and I forgot how to speak English. They were heading out for the evening, so I didn't have to fumble my way through small talk for too long. But the second the door closed, I just sat there for a minute in utter disbelief. When they returned later that night, they were both a little rosy-cheeked from the drinks, laughing about something that probably sounded 10 times funnier after midnight. I joined them for a bit, trying to play it cool even though internally I was screaming. She was warm, funny, genuinely curious, asking about my work, what I liked to do, all with this easy confidence that made it impossible not to be charmed. Eventually, the conversation mellowed. One by one, we ran out of stories and wine, and they disappeared to John's room. I was left alone, tipsy and wide awake, my head spinning. You know that mix of secondhand excitement and pure curiosity that just eats away at you? That was me. Through our paper-thin apartment walls, I started hearing the soft, muffled sounds of laughter, conversation, teasing whispers, the kind of sounds that tell you something is happening even if you don't know exactly what. My pulse was racing, my imagination doing most of the heavy lifting. I wasn't hearing anything graphic, just enough to paint a picture in my head I absolutely did not need before bed. It was equal parts hilarious and unbelievably surreal. I kept telling myself, there is no way this is happening. That woman, that literal famous person, is right there in that room. I leaned back on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of voices rise and fall, and thought, John really might be living every guy's dream. He wasn't even bragging. I could hear proof that it was real through the wall. I laughed to myself, partly jealous, mostly amazed. At some point, the noises turned to quiet conversation again. I couldn't make out what they were saying, just two people catching their breath between laughter and little murmurs. There's something oddly intimate about being so close to someone else's moment like that. Not in a creepy way, just in that humans are fascinating kind of way. You realize how much energy fills the air when two people connect. Eventually, silence took over. I grabbed my phone, scrolled aimlessly, and ended up falling asleep grinning at how absurd my night had been. By morning, she was gone, vanished like a dream you try to hold on to but can't. Only the faint scent of her perfume hung in the air, proof she'd even been there. John was making coffee when I stumbled into the kitchen. I didn't even try to play it cool. "So?" I asked. His smirk said everything before his words caught up. "She's incredible," he said simply, like he'd just described a good movie instead of one of the most famous women on earth being in our apartment. I, of course, bombarded him with every question imaginable. What was she like? What did she say? Did she stay the whole night? He gave me just enough to feed my curiosity but left out the details, partly because he's a gentleman, partly because he loved watching me lose my mind with envy. Apparently it was a one-time thing, schedules, fame, distance, who knows. But it didn't even matter. The fact that it happened at all still doesn't feel real. Sometimes, when I'm watching TV and she pops up in an interview, I can't help but laugh. Because I'll remember her sitting barefoot on our couch, stealing the last glass of wine, talking to me about work like we were just three regular people. John's the kind of guy who'll shrug off stuff like that as if it's Tuesday. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to process the sheer chaos of it all. If there's a takeaway here, it's this. Having a hot, successful, charming roommate might be the ultimate roller coaster. You get the access, the stories, the absurdity, and sometimes, if you're lucky, a front row seat to the kind of situation you'll be replaying in your mind for years, shaking your head and saying, "No way that actually happened." But yep, it did. And I was there. Story 3. This is a true story, or at least as true as my memory allows after a few too many red, white, and blue cocktails. So every 4th of July, my sister-in-law and her husband host this massive cookout. It's a big thing, yard games, fireworks, people from their whole neighborhood. My wife and I always stay the night because, well, it's an hour's drive home and nobody wants to be the designated driver when there's a cooler full of hard seltzers and homemade margaritas. By the end of this particular night, the sky had gone dark, the sparklers were melting down to those glowing wires, and it was just the four of us left, me, my wife, her sister, and my brother-in-law. We were in that perfect zone, not sloppy, just happy. Someone put on some music, and we were sitting there, that lazy, tired kind of buzz when you can't stop laughing at nothing. That's when my wife's sister goes, "Let's play truth or dare." Now the husbands instantly groaned. You know that look guys give each other when they can already sense trouble brewing? Yeah, that one. But at this point in the night, saying no wasn't really an option. So we agreed. It started silly. What's your most embarrassing high school moment? I dare you to dance to the next song like you're auditioning for a boy band. Just harmless, ridiculous fun. But as these things usually go, the dares started edging from playful to playful. And of course, someone made up a new rule, no backing out. You pick truth or dare, you have to follow through. And, well, that's when it started to feel like maybe this game was spinning a little out of control, in the kind of way you don't actually want to stop. There was laughter, a few light-hearted, slightly bold moments that had everyone blushing and pretending not to make eye contact. The music was low, the lighting soft, the air charged in a way that no one commented on, but everyone could feel. We were still joking, still laughing, but there was this energy hanging between us, teasing, daring, the kind of atmosphere that makes every word sound like it means more than it does. At one point, my wife threw out a dare so unexpected that all of us froze. Even she blinked like she couldn't believe what she'd just said out loud. Her sister looked at her husband, eyebrows raised, waiting for him to say something. After a long pause, he smirked and said, "Hey, your rules, no backing out." And that was it. Everyone laughed, awkward at first, then more genuine, but the mood had completely shifted. We weren't just playing a party game anymore. It was like everyone had silently agreed we were crossing into some uncharted territory of curiosity and trust. I'm going to stop you right there. No, I won't give details. Let's just say everything from that point on felt like a blur of nervous laughter, adrenaline, and the kind of charged tension that makes the air itself feel heavier. It was one of those nights that borders on unbelievable, part heartbeat, part dream. Eventually, the game fizzled out naturally. Someone yawned. Someone else muttered something about it being late. The fireworks outside had long burned out, but somehow, the night still felt electric. My wife and I said our goodnights and headed to the guest room. Now, let's just say we did not fall asleep immediately. My wife was unusually affectionate. I'm not saying truth or dare is a marriage booster, but whatever happened, it left everyone's nerves frayed in the most interesting way possible. The next morning was painfully normal. That kind of, we're just going to pretend none of that ever happened, normal. The sunlight came in through the kitchen window, coffee was brewing, pancakes were on the griddle. Small talk about fireworks, weather, and plans for the rest of the week filled the silence like a safety net. No one said a word about the game. Not one. Even as we packed up our overnight bag, there was this unspoken look between everyone, equal parts embarrassment, amusement, and disbelief. Like, did that actually happen? Or was it just the kind of 4th of July dream you have when you mix equal parts alcohol, summer heat, and too much confidence? Back in the car, the radio was playing some classic American rock song, and my wife and I just sat there grinning like idiots. It took a while before either of us spoke. Finally, she goes, "Well, that was memorable." And all I could do was laugh. We've never mentioned it since, not to her sister, not to her husband, not even really to each other. It's become one of those stories that lives only as energy, a secret 4th of July memory wrapped in sparks and laughter and a little too much daring. Every year when the fireworks start popping, I can't help but think back to that night. How one silly game got way out of hand, how a little mischief can turn an ordinary evening into something unforgettable, and how some stories are better left as suggestions, not confessions. So yeah, truth or dare might sound harmless, until it isn't. Story 4. It all started yesterday, my girlfriend's first day at her new job. She looked incredible. You know when someone doesn't even try to look good, but everything about them just works? Yeah, that was her. Black pants that fit just right, a loose shirt that somehow made things even more mysterious. She smiled at me before leaving, that confident but sweet kind of smile like, "Don't wait up." Now we have this running game, a little private thing between us. It's not serious, just a playful rule we made to keep things fun. Whenever I text her that I'm thinking about her, she has to find a way to remind me that the feeling's mutual. It's our way of keeping the spark alive, no matter how long we've been together. So that evening, it's around 7 o'clock, and she's got a couple of hours left in her first shift. I send her a message that just says, "You still thinking of me?" A few minutes later, my phone buzzes. She'd sent something back, a subtle little photo that made me laugh and shake my head like, of course she did. It wasn't anything wild, just the kind of picture that makes your heart speed up a little because it's her, confident, playful, completely in control of your attention. So I text again, careful. "You're distracting me." She leaves me on read. No reply. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I know she's grinning at her phone, pretending not to see it, testing me. That's her style. She loves bending the rules just enough to see what I'll do. When I pick her up from work later that night, I tease her. You know you broke the rules, right? She laughs, that low, mischievous kind of laugh. Rules, she says, pretending not to know what I mean. Oh yeah, I tell her. You're supposed to respond when your boyfriend's thinking about you. But apparently you were too busy for me. She rolls her eyes, but she's smiling. I was working, she says, and besides, you love it when I make you wait. And she's absolutely right. At home, she gets comfortable, hair down, no makeup, still glowing from her first day. We sit on the couch, the TV playing something in the background neither of us are watching. The air feels heavy in that way it does when you're both pretending not to feel it. I nudge her shoulder with mine. You know, if I let you get away with breaking the rules, you'll think you can do it all the time, I say. She looks at me, half amused, half challenging. So what? You gonna give me detention? I could, I tease, leaning closer. Her lips twitch into a smile, but she doesn't pull away. You wouldn't, she says quietly. And that right there, that's our whole thing. The push and pull, the challenge, the game. She loves to test boundaries, and I love to see just how far she'll go before she admits she's the one playing with fire. The night keeps teasing us forward. Every word, every look turns into part of the same rhythm, witty, daring, full of implication. She reaches over to grab the TV remote and brushes against me on purpose. I can tell. That tiny smirk of hers gives her away. You're still breaking rules, I whisper. She turns her head, eyes sparkling. Then maybe you should stop me. It's moments like that when I realize just how well we know each other, when a single glance says everything that doesn't need to be said. But I make her wait. I stretch out the suspense. That's part of the fun. She fiddles with her hair, pretending to focus on the TV, but her body language gives away every thought she's trying not to say out loud. Finally, I stand and say, all right. Since you want to play games, we'll make it official. Your punishment is patience. She groans dramatically. You're impossible. Consider it a lesson, I grin. Next time, follow the rules. And then I walk off just to leave her there, exasperated but giggling. It's harmless, flirty banter that keeps us both on our toes. A few minutes later, she comes into the kitchen, leans against the counter, and says, in that mock-innocent tone, So how long exactly does this punishment last? Until I decide you've learned your lesson, I tell her. She crosses her arms, pretending to pout, but the corners of her lips betray her. The tension between us is thick, playful, daring, warm. You can tell neither one of us actually wants to win the game. The fun is in the chase. That's what I love about her. She's bold, clever, and just rebellious enough to make every day feel like it's charged with electricity. Everything's a story with her, even a random Tuesday night after work. And sure, she still claims she did nothing wrong, that it was a technicality because she was busy. But let's just say ever since then, she's been very careful about ignoring my texts, and I've learned that the best kind of rules are the ones that leave just enough room for mischief. Story 5. 1 week out of my parents' house, freedom. After years of 9 p.m. curfews, no dating without permission, and double-checking what time I'd be home, I finally had my own space. Technically, it wasn't my place. It was their empty condo, 15 minutes from campus. But to me, it was a whole different universe. Then, on my first weekend of independence, the kitchen's sink decided to rebel. Overnight, I woke up to the sound of a slow drip turning into a miniature waterfall. My newfound freedom came with pipes that leaked like a bad secret. At 11 a.m., there's a knock on the door. Maintenance. Standing there is him. The building's maintenance guy, 20-something tall, a faded work shirt rolled at the sleeves, tool belt slung low, name tag with a single letter, M. He's fixed something in the bathroom once before. We'd exchanged an awkward hey and thanks. That was it. Now seeing him again, he looks even taller in the daylight. His shirt smells faintly like sawdust and laundry powder. I suddenly remember I'm in a thin tank top, loose cotton shorts, hair still damp from my morning shower. I look like I've been living in a commercial for unbothered summer. The sink's leaking pretty bad, I say, motioning toward the kitchen. No problem, he replies, voice steady, toolbox clanking as he kneels under the sink. Water hisses and pipes groan while he works. I linger by the counter, pretending to check my phone, really just watching the rhythm of his movements. Every turn of the wrench, every sound from under the sink feels amplified in the quiet condo. His shirt rides up slightly each time he stretches, a strip of golden back catching the light. He mutters something under his breath, probably plumber language, or maybe just why won't this stupid pipe tighten? And I try not to smile. So, I ask awkwardly, long day. He glances up, amused. Second call. Yours sounds much friendlier than the last one. The last lady yelled at me like I personally invented broken faucets. I laugh, too hard maybe, and we both relax into small talk. Turns out he lives 2 buildings over, has a dog named Duke, and he's been divorced a couple of years. I mention how I'm just getting used to living alone, away from house rules. He nods, tightening something under the sink. Bet that feels good. Finally being able to make your own schedule. I shrug, sipping my iced coffee, trying to look nonchalant. Yeah, no one telling me what to wear or when to sleep. I'm still getting used to it. His voice dips just slightly. Freedom can be addictive. The words hang there for a beat. There's nothing inappropriate about them, but somehow they feel charged, like the air before a summer storm. He stands, testing the faucet. The dripping slows, then stops completely. There we go, he says, rinsing his hands. Bad gasket. Probably original to the unit. Thought so. He dries his hands on a rag and pauses, glancing toward me with a smile that's polite, but lingers half a second too long. It's fixed, he adds. Thank you, I say. You honestly saved me from having to call my parents pretending I didn't flood their sink. No problem, he says softly. Call if it acts up again. As he gathers his tools, there's that playful kind of silence again. The one that isn't awkward, just loaded with unspoken possibilities neither of us are acknowledging. He moves toward the door, toolbox in hand. I follow to let him out, heart pounding faster than it has any right to. The sunlight from the window cuts across his shoulders, and my brain completely blanks on anything clever to say. Then he stops, glancing back. You sure you're all settled here? Everything else working okay? Yeah, I answer, but it sounds more like a question. He nods, gives a small smile. All right then. For a heartbeat, neither of us moves. The world feels slowed down, like a scene that doesn't want to end yet. And maybe I imagine it, or maybe it's real. But I swear, in that quiet room, there's the faintest flicker of understanding. Something isn't just fixed with the sink. Then he clears his throat, breaks the spell. Enjoy your freedom, he says, and steps out into the hallway. The door clicks shut. I stand there for a moment, listening to my own heartbeat, noticing how loud it sounds in the empty condo. Later, I find myself wiping down the counter he leaned against, replaying every detail in my mind. The way his voice dropped when he said freedom. The brief pause before he left, the warmth that seemed to linger after. Maybe it was just a normal visit, I tell myself. Maintenance guy does his job, that's it. But another part of me, the part that's savoring every inch of this new, unfiltered independence, can't help but wonder if he felt it too. I open the fixed faucet, let the water run, clear, steady, no leaks. The sink hums with perfect rhythm, and for some reason, it feels symbolic, like the condo itself is exhaling after holding its breath. That night, I sit on the couch, TV flickering unnoticed, mind wandering back to the scent of sawdust and soap, the glint of sunlight on tan skin, and that one word echoing in my head, freedom. Living alone means I can think about whatever I want, imagine whatever I want. No one's tapping at my door reminding me of curfew, or asking who that was I kept smiling at while he worked. The next morning, I check under the sink just to be sure. No drip, no leak, just the faint smell of metal and new pipes. I laugh to myself and, out of pure mischief, think maybe I'll call him next week anyway. The sink's acting funny again, I'll say. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Story 6. I'm 55 now, have built a full life, a good career, steady work, a small apartment with books stacked where art probably should be. But every so often, my mind drifts back to a single evening about 10 years ago. The details are hazy, but the feeling remains clear, almost tangible. It wasn't about romance, not exactly, and it wasn't about anything physical in the ordinary sense. It was about presence, being so aware of another person that the air between you feels electric. It started quietly, the way so many unexpected nights do, with an online ad I stumbled across after one of those long, restless evenings. She described herself simply, warm, patient, discreet. That was enough to get my attention. I wrote her an email, careful but honest, explaining that I wasn't looking for anything wild. I just wanted connection, a kind of shared space. She agreed to meet. The hotel was ordinary, the kind you forget the moment you leave. But she was not forgettable. She was younger than I expected, early 20s, with kind brown eyes that caught the light in a way that made everything else fade a little. Her smile, too, was quiet, not practiced, but genuine enough to put me at ease. We spoke first. About travel, about where she wanted to go next, about how I was terrible at taking time off. 10 minutes in, I realized she was remarkable in the way people are when they live entirely in the present tense. She didn't fidget, didn't check her phone, didn't fill silence with chatter. She just was. That stillness settled between us. At some point, without announcing it, she moved closer, until our shoulders brushed. The simplest gesture, yet it changed everything. You know that moment when you know exactly what will happen next, but you're in no rush to reach it? That was it. The seconds stretched, full of quiet energy. I could hear every sound, the hum of the air conditioner, the slow rhythm of our breathing. We didn't rush a thing. We shared the space, side by side, exploring the strange comfort of wordless company. It felt both tender and daring, like we were testing intimacy without crossing into performance. There was no script, no exchange beyond time and attention. I remember her eyes meeting mine, steady and unguarded. It was one of those unspoken conversations where everything is said without words. The kind of exchange that makes you forget who initiated what, or what you were doing a moment before. There was attraction, of course, a spark humming quietly under everything, but the surprising part was how peaceful it all felt. No scramble, no pretense, just presence. I'd expected something transactional, maybe even awkward. What I got was a lesson in stillness, in being seen and seeing back. For nearly an hour, we existed in that in-between space, half-clothed, half-silent, fully aware. At one point, she smiled that small smile again and whispered, "You're a thinker, aren't you?" I chuckled. Maybe too much. "Then don't," she said softly. "Just be." Simple words, but I've carried them with me ever since. When our time ended, she rested her head briefly on my shoulder, then sat up, smoothing her hair. "You're sweet," she said with a light laugh. "You didn't expect that to feel the way it did you?" I confessed I hadn't. She nodded like she already knew. "Most people think they come here for the obvious things," she said, "but sometimes what they really want is to be seen, just for a bit." That line stuck with me for years. To be seen, just for a bit. We talked for a while after that, letting the conversation drift to harmless topics, favorite music, how hotel lamps are always too dim, and the strange comfort of chance encounters. The mood lightened, laughter occasional but easy. When I finally stood to leave, she looked at me with that calm expression again, half playful, half thoughtful. "You'll be okay," she said, as if she could read something I hadn't said out loud. And I was. A.M. But every now and then, late at night, I think about the quietness of that room. Two strangers sharing a moment that wasn't about taking or giving, but simply existing together. It changed something in me. Before that night, I thought intimacy was mostly about proximity, about how close two people could get. But I learned it's also about awareness, about paying attention, about the courage to be genuinely present with someone, even if only for an hour. There was no romance afterward, no exchange of numbers or false promises. Just the echo of that stillness, lingering like a soft chord at the end of a song. Now, when life feels too real, when the meetings blur, the calendar overflows, sometimes I pause, take a deep breath, and remember her words. Just be. Because that's what that night truly was. Not a transaction, not a story about desire, but a reminder that sometimes connection appears in the most unlikely places, quiet, unassuming, and honest. Story 7. I live in a small apartment with 3 roommates, and lately life here has become a little more complicated, but also, in its own strange way, more beautiful. There's Tony, the quiet one, my personal final boss. He's impossible to read, calm, polite, barely flustered by anything. I've never seen him bring anyone home, or even flirt. He lives in a bubble of unbothered peace that somehow makes him the most magnetic person in the room. I haven't figured him out yet, but I'm working on it. Then there's Raleigh. She's soft-spoken, with the kind of smile that makes people automatically soften around her. When we first became roommates, she was shy, the kind of person who apologizes for taking up space. But lately, the walls between us have thinned. We started hanging out more, movie nights, kitchen conversations that stretched past midnight. And through all of that, something unexpected and quietly electric began to unfold. A few nights ago, Marcus, the third roommate, was called in for an overnight shift. It was just Raleigh and me at home, the living room sulking in the glow of string lights, the quiet hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. We poured wine, chose a movie neither of us paid attention to, and let the conversation wander. We talked about everything, about freedom, about how strange it feels when you start to learn who you are outside other people's definitions. She's new to that. I see it in her eyes, that mix of nerves and curiosity, like she's stepping into sunlight after a long time indoors. When the movie ended, the room stayed warm and slow. We ended up in my bed, still talking, close enough that every laugh brushed at the edges of something unspoken. It wasn't planned. It just happened. The space between us thinned until it was barely there. I kissed her first. It was gentle, one of those curious, uncertain beginnings that start as a question, not a statement. She tasted faintly of something sweet, maybe cherry lip balm or maybe wine. Either way, it was soft and unforgettable. Her breath caught, and she smiled into the kiss like she'd been waiting to understand what it felt like. There was no rush, just an unfolding. Her hand found mine and lingered. I could feel the nervous energy radiating off her, but beneath it, excitement, that quiet, trembling joy of discovery. We explored what comfort felt like, what closeness meant without labels or destinations. The lights cast lazy shadows across her skin as the world shrank down to rustling sheets and the sound of our breathing. Every look, every laugh, every touch was its own conversation. Sometimes she'd pause, study my face with a question in her eyes, and then continue with a shyness that made my heart ache in the sweetest way. There's something profoundly intimate about learning someone's rhythm, the way they sigh, the way they reach for you without needing to say a word. We found a kind of quiet synchronization that night, a flow of energy that felt at once new and familiar. After, we just lay there. She rested her head against my shoulder, tracing lazy circles with her fingers. The night outside hummed, city sounds muffled by closed curtains, but everything felt still. We talked again, softer now, about how strange connection can be, about how it never fits the neat boxes people want it to. She said she didn't expect to feel this comfortable with someone, especially someone who started out as a roommate with mismatched mugs and a shared Netflix account. I laughed, but silently I agreed. I've had moments before that were passionate, but very few that were this tender. It wasn't about being wild or bold, it was about trust. That night was a reminder that sometimes the most intimate thing two people can do is just let each other be, fully, wholly, without the noise of judgment or agenda. We stayed that way until nearly sunrise, the early light brushing the edges of the blinds. Her hair smelled faintly of my shampoo, a small, strangely intimate detail that made everything feel even more entwined. Eventually, we fell asleep tangled in a soft blur of warmth and quiet laughter. The next morning, reality returned, coffee, emails, the normal chaos of shared space. But something had shifted. She moved through the apartment differently, more sure of herself, smiling for no reason. And me? I couldn't stop thinking about her, and the ease that seemed to come with her presence. Later that day, I caught Tony in the kitchen. He gave me one of his unreadable looks, the kind that might have been curiosity, or maybe just politeness. Part of me wanted to tell him, about the night, about Raleigh's laughter echoing softly in my mind, but another part of me liked keeping it as ours, a small secret folded into the fabric of our home. I think that's what I love most about living here, the strange, unpredictable way connection takes root where you least expect it. You move in with strangers and end up building something that's part friendship, part family, and sometimes something that doesn't fit into words at all. Raleigh and I haven't labeled anything. Maybe we never will. Maybe that's what makes it perfect. It's not something to define, only something to feel. Every time we pass each other in the hallway, her hand brushes mine just long enough to remind me that something beautiful really is forming between us, even if neither of us can quite explain what it is. And as for Tony, my final boss, well, there's time. I've learned that sometimes the best things arrive not when you chase them, but when you simply leave space for them to show up. Story 8. She's beautiful in that unintentional way. The kind of person who just exists in rhythm with herself. Short hair, worn-in t-shirts, confidence that doesn't need to be loud. She's openly gay, talks about her ex-girlfriends the way other people talk about old road trips. With fondness, a grin, no shame at all. Meanwhile, I've always been the straight one. The roommate who laughs off her flirting, who teases back but never means it. At least, I thought I didn't. And then something small changed everything. A few weeks ago, she borrowed my charger and saw something on my screen that apparently spoke volumes, a short clip tucked between memes and random scrolling. I caught her smirking at me across the room. "Didn't know you watched that kind of stuff," she said playfully. I tried to play it cool, shrugged. "Just curiosity." She tilted her head, studied me the way cats study puzzle boxes, curious, patient, quietly entertained. Then she laughed, soft and low. Curiosity's how most people figure out who they are, she said, walking away. The line stuck with me for days. Fast forward to last weekend. I was in my underwear heading from my room to the bathroom, half awake, hair up in a messy bun, the air in the apartment thick and lukewarm from the broken fan we keep meaning to fix. When I came back, she was in my bed, sprawled across it like she owned the place, my phone in her hand. The light from the screen lit her face, and there was that same amused, knowing look. You left this unlocked, she said. You've got interesting taste, you know. I froze for a second, embarrassed, caught, intrigued. My phone screen glowed with a paused video, two women close, almost kissing. She looked up at me and patted the blanket beside her. Come here, she said. Something about her tone didn't really leave room for saying no. So I sat down, heart hammering like I'd just sprinted. She didn't tease, not really. She just looked at me, searching my face for something. Does it actually get to you? Stuff like this? Her voice wasn't mocking, just curious. And suddenly it felt safe to tell the truth. Yeah, I admitted quietly. It kind of does. She smiled, slow, like she'd been waiting for that answer. Then softer. Do you want to know why? I nodded. Didn't trust my voice. What followed wasn't what people would imagine. It wasn't rushed or wild or anything out of a movie. It was quiet, all slow movements and shared breathing, a closeness that made me feel new in my own skin. She didn't ask permission every second, but her eyes did, always checking, always giving me space to pull away. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, fascinated by how natural it felt to blur that invisible line I'd kept between admiration and something more. It wasn't even about labels or identity in that moment. It was about curiosity meeting courage. About trust. We spent what felt like hours talking, laughing, exploring what it meant to just exist in that new kind of intimacy. My thoughts flickered between what am I doing, and why does this feel so right? Her hands were steady when mine weren't, her energy calm where mine was racing. There was a rhythm between us I can't explain, a slow, magnetic pull that had nothing to do with roles or definitions. Just two people deciding to drop the noise for a while. Eventually, the world narrowed to whispers and breath. And for a while it felt like floating, that half-awake, half-dreaming state where everything's lighter and softer and infinitely more real. When I woke up, morning light was filtering through the blinds, and she was curled beside me, asleep but smiling a little, like she had a secret she didn't plan to keep. For a long minute, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to name what I felt. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't confusion. It was something gentler, an ache for understanding mixed with wonder. Later, over coffee, she was her usual self again, casual, breezy, maybe a little smug. Sleep okay? She asked, without looking up from her mug. I nearly choked on my toast. Yeah. You. She just grinned. Good. Maybe we'll talk more about your interesting tastes sometime. Her tone was teasing, but underneath it was something else, something open, patient, waiting. The rest of the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something between us had shifted. Not in a bad way, more like the air had changed, the unspoken had suddenly gotten comfortable being in the room with us. I don't know what happens next. Maybe it was a moment that stays a memory, or maybe it's the start of something neither of us expected. But it made me see that attraction isn't as neat and binary as I once thought.